What's up, everybody? Yeah, happy Monday. Welcome to church. For those of you who are brand new, welcome to Movement. My name is Josh. I am not a lady. Rhett said I was earlier. I'm totally 100% dude, all right? We're thrilled that you are here. It really means the world to us that you would spend a part of your Monday night and finding a way to make your Monday matter. And if you've been around for a while, then you would know that we have these talks every single week, and we plan them and dream about them together as a team and pray about what we're going to speak about. When we do that, we do it through the filter and the lens of like a season. Nobody wants to listen to me talk or any of us talk for like 4 hours straight, so we break it all up. And this is literally episode 116, all right? So we are glad that you guys are here, and we are in the middle of this series called Both And. We live in a world that is so much like either or, and it is very polarizing. And you could literally be in a great place relationally with somebody, and then all of a sudden, they're like, whoa, we're not on the same team anymore. You like licorice. You know, and you're like, what's wrong with licorice? And all of you who eat licorice, bless your hearts, all right? You are welcome here. We're glad that you're at Movement, but we're going to be praying for you, all right? Last week, we talked a little bit about doing good in your neighborhood. And one of the most exciting things about this is you're a part of a community that doesn't just talk about doing good in the neighborhood. You actually did it. Like this weekend, over 50 of you, we lost count, literally did everything you could to love and demonstrate God's amazing grace to over 1,000 people in Merrimack at the Merrimack Winter Carnival. You guys are doing so much good in your neighborhood. Whether you showed up, provided something, helped, set up, tear down, whatever, you're a part of a story that is so much bigger than ourselves. So either or, let's get kicked off. I want to play this game. So you just shout out your answer, and it's not going to be weird. You can talk like this is supposed to be fun. All right. So just say your answer out loud. Pants or shorts? Okay. Very good. All right. The house is divided already. Here we go. CDs, cassettes, records, or MP3s? Okay. All right. Like this is so weird. Monday night's answers are always way different. Okay. Skiing or surfing? Or snowboarding. All right, whatever. Okay, so we're getting a little more personal now, a little bit more intimate. Worshiping online or on-site? Okay, what about you guys? Everybody who is watching online right now, feel free to just put your answer right in there. There's no judgment. Welcome. We're so glad. Okay, this is so cool. So if you're brand new to Movement, you wouldn't know this, but from the very beginning, we set our alarms to go off at 6:03 a.m. and p.m. no matter like where we're at. And so one of our kids, one of our teenagers, was literally out at the Winter Carnival and was like, "I want you to meet my friend." And I was like, and we were like, "Okay, all right, what?" So what's kind of the scoop? And it was like, I wanted to prove to my friend from school that like Jesus followers aren't all like judgmental jerks. And I was like, well, yeah, not all of them are, but some of them are. And for some of you, it was like that category of people who literally bought into this lie. It was like it's an either or thing that kind of caused you to walk away from faith. So final question on either or. Okay, this one gets really serious. All right, you ready? Would you rather help people or be helped? Yeah, I mean, I think everybody, I practice this on my friends, like literally all ages, all walks of life, all faith systems, people who are agnostic, people who are atheists, people who are literally completely like non-religious, not even a little bit. And I would look at them and say like, so would you rather like help people or be helped? And almost every single time, except for one time, people will say like, I want to help people. And where on earth does that even come from? Another one of our teenage girls set her alarm to pray at 6:03 a.m. and p.m. And she came up after one of our services and was like, check this out. You got to look at this. And I was like, okay, this happens all the time. And she's like, I finally set my alarm to pray. And I was like, awesome. Has anything crazy happened? And she was telling me the story about a girl in the cafeteria who was in her grade, who was literally kind of being a bully to her. And she said, so when I set my alarm at 6:03 a.m. and p.m., I began to start praying for this girl. And I was like, so how long has this been going on? Well, for like a few weeks. Well, have you noticed anything new? Has anything different happened? And she's like, well, actually, like, I feel like way more compassionate towards her now. And actually, just a few weeks after I started praying for her, she's actually one of my closest friends now. And I thought to myself, like, man, wouldn't it be so amazing if life could be that simple, right? Like kids get into a scuffle or something, and like the next day they like make up and everybody says sorry, and you just kind of like move on from that, that point. And in junior high, we still see that happening. In high school, we see that happening, and God is writing a new story right now. And so like, I don't know where you're at, and I don't know where you're tuning in from tonight, but Movement is full of a whole bunch of people. We have a really simple mission. Our mission is just to help people move closer to Jesus and people. And it doesn't even matter where you're at in any kind of, journey. And if you're like just curious in who Jesus is, we aren't going to make anybody set their alarms. But if you're a part of this community, you would know that every single time your alarm goes off at 6:03 a.m. and p.m., wherever, you know that you are not alone. I get close to anywhere in the neighborhood of like 50 to 75 different people text me every single day, different times of the day, okay? And this morning, I got a text message from one of my friends at 6:03 a.m. A few friends text me at 6:03 all the time to keep me accountable. Let's keep it real, all right? I'm not most alive at 6:03. And one of my friends texted me just like this simple like image of a heart, and another person said, and literally prayed the prayer. And I don't know what's going on in your heart right now. I don't know what happened between the parking lot and you coming here. I don't know what happened from the time you woke up this morning until the time you have tuned in here. But this is a safe place. It's a safe place to discover exactly how big God's love is for you. Our big idea for this week is really, really simple. It goes like this. Love is a team sport. Love is a team sport. So every single week, a team of servant leaders gather together, unnamed and mostly unknown. They gather together, they roll out dough on their kitchen, on their kitchen counters, and they bake it in the oven, and they cut it up into these little tiny squares, and they carefully cut it and place it and load it up into bags, and they drive it to Movement, and they place it in trays. And there's a whole other group of servant leaders that literally grab those trays and pass those out, and we celebrate communion. We celebrate, as Aaron said just a few minutes ago, we celebrate stopping in a world that won't stop moving, and we just stop and pause. And for some of you, that is an incredibly intensely personal thing, because something happened in your life, or something happened in your parents' life, or something happened in your neighbor's life, your close friend's life, and they were told at one point in time that you cannot take communion. The same was true for one of our friends at Movement, who literally decided he found his way back to God, and the next week after he put his faith and trust in Jesus and was baptized, the next week I was choked up as I looked, and I looked up, and it was him that was passing the tray to serve communion. This is just crazy. Love is a team sport. For some of you, it's been an incredibly long time for you to be able to walk into church and you actually like it and want to come back. For some of you, it is the effort and the energy of a ton of people that you would never be able to stand up and thank, that put a ton of energy and effort to create a safe place for you to be able to sit in the back and be able to remain anonymous for as long as you possibly want to be, but provide clarity whenever you are ready to make a move. Love is a team sport. Every single Monday night, like you would never know this, but every single Monday, an email goes out to our entire experience team. And that's everybody who plays on stage or creates this worship experience for every single one of us. An email lands in an inbox and that is filled with sheet music and details about where we are going and what God is going to be doing in the next several weeks. And so literally, once those emails are received, people rush from their cars to their garages to their basements. They give their families earplugs. They start practicing all of their sheet music on Monday for like several weeks ahead of time. And then on Wednesdays, they come home from work and they eat dinner with their families early. And they come here and they spend 2.5 hours. And before they even begin rehearsing, they sit right here in this middle section and they stop. And they just thank God for who he is. And they celebrate what God is doing in their lives before they ever step foot on a stage. Why? Because love is a team sport. Every single week, a team of servant leaders gather together to do something that is way more important and way bigger and way more crucial in the lives of the next generation than childcare or babysitting. No, it's so much better than that. They invest in the next generation and actually lead and instruct them and teach them to actually care for other people the way that Jesus cares for us. They comfort kids who are crying in their cribs. They provoke discovery in toddlers and incite wonder in the hearts of elementary kids. They fuel passion in the hearts of teenagers. Why? Because love is a team sport. Every single Sunday night, an entire small army of adult volunteers show up to literally walk through life with junior hires who don't know anything about deodorant yet. All right? Because wouldn't it be awesome? Wouldn't it be awesome if somebody showed up in your story and somebody was consistent and somebody spoke life and hope and direction and purpose into your life? Somebody who might not have lived under your house but understands what it's like to live under the roof of a house. And why? Why on earth would these people do this? Why on earth would they invest so much in the next generation? Why? Because love is a team sport. Every single weekend, you wouldn't know this, but before every single service that happens here at Movement, there's a team of people that gather together to pray to make sure that we can literally do anything within our ability to help people who feel lonely, people who feel invisible, people who are walking through life feeling like they're forgotten, to actually be known and loved deeply right where they're at. Why? Because love is a team sport. Every single week, there's 18 different families all over southern New Hampshire that walk to their closets and grab out the leaf and they put it in their kitchen table. They clean their house, they prepare a meal, and they create place and a space for people to actually live life together, to be able to live in community so that people don't have to carry their burdens alone. We call those moving groups. And why do we do that? Why would we go to such effort to make sure that you guys have a chance to be able to grow in your relationship with Jesus and not have to do it alone? Because love is a team sport. Every single week, there are about 50 families who make it a financial priority to actually help provide a place for others that has already been provided for them. And every single week we come to this place and we thank God for everything that he has given us because love is a team sport. But it's not very often that we look at one another and say, are you ready to play? You see, deep down inside of every single one of us, we've already said it. We've already said it out loud. Like when it comes down to making the decision on would we rather help people or people help us, we will always 10 out of 10 times, we will say help people. And most of the time, we don't know where to even start. We don't know where to start because our calendars are absolutely chaotic, and sincerely, we have the best intentions, but we get stuck in these potholes and interruptions and all the responsibilities we've already said yes to. And if you're anything like any of us, you can't shut off the dreamer inside of you. And so some of you feel like, man, I feel like I've already wasted so many opportunities to do good in the world, and I feel like I've blown it, and I don't feel like God is going to give me any more of those opportunities. Listen up. Love is a team sport, and we need you. And so maybe if you feel that way, maybe you feel guilty, or today you carried in shame or regret from your past of all the missed opportunities. I would just want to challenge you to do one thing. Do the next good thing that you feel God is leading you to do. Like, do the very next thing that you feel like God is leading you to do. Because I promise you, he's going to nudge you and he's going to tap you on the shoulder and say, hey, look, I know you see this. I need you to meet this. And here's why. Because love is a team sport. There's nothing that will get you out of a funk faster than actually serving people. Actually showing up in somebody else's story and looking at them in the eye and say, listen, I know that things are heavy, and I know that things are really, really hard, but how can I help? Last week, we unpacked this idea that we live in a world that is driven by scarcity, the scarcity mentality, that literally looks like us living in fear and constant competition of the people around us. And there is just kind of like this refusal within us to celebrate the success of other people because we feel like success in other people means that we have lost in some way or that we're not good enough in some way. And we also talked about the abundance mentality, which is like a highly collaborative mindset, and every win that somebody else has in their life is actually shared with one another. That when others win, we all win. We also introduced the kingdom mentality or the gospel mentality that goes a little bit like this, and this is the story that Jesus brought to earth. It looks like this: deny yourself, follow Jesus, and find life. Deny yourself, follow Jesus, and find life. So whenever you think about the future, whenever you think about what is next, when you think about your future, when you think about the future of your family, when you think about the future of the generation that is coming up behind you, when you think about what is next in your life, do you feel worry and stress, or do you feel peace? Do you feel worry and stress, or do you feel peace? And do you feel like, are you anything like me? Like I find myself in these moments and I'm just kind of like, okay, God, you know that I need your help. You remember those moments? Like the moments where you're like flat on your face, you can't say anything to anybody, you can barely even say a word, but you like pray to a God and you're like, God, I don't know if you're still there. We haven't talked in a really long time, but I really need your help. And if you get me out of this one, I promise you next time is going to be different, and I'm going to help someone. I'm going to do something helpful. I'm going to live a story that doesn't point to me. I'm going to live a bigger story, a better story, a story that will outlast my lifetime. So I think many of us have this struggle, and we walk through life, and we have the greatest intention. But one of the things, whenever we think about what is next, we find ourselves worried and we find ourselves stressed. And what on earth do we do about that? One wise man once said, I think it's probably important for every single one of us that if you find yourself in a funk, if you find yourself kind of caught in the middle of a rut, you need to think about your life in reverse. Start with the end in mind. Begin with the end in mind. And it goes like this: what do you want at the end of your life? At the end of your life, what do you want people to line up and thank you for? At the end of your life, let's just say, think hypothetically for a second. Let's just say you live and work and you eat and you're merry and like you're 80 years old. Somebody throws you a celebration party and the room is just crowded full and there's a mic up top and somebody comes up to the microphone and says, and they begin to thank you for investing in their lives. What do you want people to say? We call this the rocking chair story for people who are beginning out in relationships and taking the next step towards marriage. We say, like, what do you want your story to be at the very end? And if you're anything like me, you want your story to be bigger than yourself. Like, this is like one of the craziest things. Like, somebody who is completely opposed to Christianity and to the way of Jesus literally got knocked down, and God completely transformed his life and literally went out and started more churches than anybody else has ever started in the history of the world. And his name is Paul. And he said this thing that is like extremely compelling and inspiring, but sometimes I forget it. And I think you probably do too whenever you are stuck in a rut. He said this. He said, live a life worthy of the calling that you have received. Live a life worthy of the calling that you have received. Be completely humble and gentle, bearing with one another in love. Why? Because love is a team sport, and God's plan was for you to play. God's plan for you was for you to actually make a move out of the worry and out of the stress, to literally look it in the eye and say, you aren't bigger than my God is. And for some of you, you are on this journey and you don't even know where to start. And I want these words of Jesus to sink straight into your heart. So here we go. Jesus said, this is like part of the kingdom mentality. He said, do not worry about your life, what you will eat, what you will drink, about your body, what you will wear. Is life not more important than food and body more important than clothes? Just pause for a second. Look at the birds of the air. They don't sow or reap or store away in barns, yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not much more valuable than they are? Who of you, by worrying, can add a single hour to his life? So like whenever we give our time and our energy and like when stress begins to get the best of us, we're like literally locking down and we're wasting moments today to actually help people, to help the world around us. So what exactly is the anecdote to that? Why do we do this? So Jesus continues, he goes on and he says, kingdom mentality, get ready. Why do you worry about clothes? See how the lilies of the field grow? They don't labor or spin, yet I tell you that not even Solomon in all of his splendor was dressed like one of these. Now listen, if that's how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today and tomorrow is thrown into the fire, will he not much more clothe you, O you of little faith? And so here's what Jesus is saying. He's saying like whenever we give ourselves over to worry and stress, whenever we let stress get the best of us, it's actually a faith issue. It is actually a trust issue of saying like, God, I really don't believe you're going to help me like you say you are. It's literally us saying like, I know that you got the whole world in your hands, but somehow I slipped through the cracks of your fingers. And Jesus says, whoa, wait a minute. You see the birds in the air and the flowers in the field? If that's how I take care of them, how much more valuable and important are you to me than they are? And then he says, and here's the solution. So do not worry, saying, has anybody ever told you not to worry and you just worry more? Maybe I'm the only one here. All right, so don't worry. I'm worrying. What? It's not working. Okay. Jesus says, here we go again. What shall we eat? What shall we drink? What shall we wear? Where are we going to live? Matthew says. For the pagans run after all of these things. And get this, your heavenly Father knows that you need them. Like the very thing that is literally choking the life out of you and pouring worry and stress in you, God knows that you need it. And so he says, so what do we do? What do we do to make the worry go away in a hurry? Does anybody here want the worry to go away in a hurry? Is there anybody here on a Monday night who wants the worry to go away in a hurry? Jesus says it's super simple. Get ready. He says, but seek first, it's not worry first, but seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all of these things that you worry about, that you stress about, that you doubt about, that you shout at one another about, all of these things that you're in a hurry to begin worrying, all of these things, listen, they're going to be given to you as well. Why? Because your heavenly Father knows that you need him. And if you're here and you're like, yeah, but my heavenly Father, I haven't always been able to trust him. There's some stuff that's happened in my life, and I'm still kind of working through that, and that's totally okay, and there's space here for you to walk and move. So here's the reality. This is what Jesus is saying. Jesus is saying God's not afraid of tomorrow, and neither should we. Like, God's not afraid of tomorrow, and we shouldn't be either. So since tomorrow belongs to God, what does that look like? We can help one another and we can help people today. Since God owns tomorrow and he is already there, already preparing a way for all of us, since tomorrow belongs to him, we can graciously offer help and hope to people today because love is a team sport. One of the things that just kind of like drives me crazy about faith, and if you've been away for a while, this like makes really no sense to you. You're kind of like, somebody invited you here, they bribed you, they were like, hey, come on, we're going to go eat tacos afterwards, and you're just kind of here. But there are some churches that literally create these experiences and literally like create a culture where people can either consume or they can contribute. They can spend all of their energy and say like, they use language like, I just want to be fed, I 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 want to be fed. And then you look around and there are other churches and like people are just moving and grooving and they're everywhere and they're literally serving everybody at all times. And we would say like either or, like is this an either or thing? Like every single one of us need to worship. And here's one of the most beautiful things about this, that God didn't create us just to worship, but God created us to create a place for other people to be able to move closer to Jesus. And here's the beauty in every single one of these things. For some of you, this is why you disengage from the story of Jesus in your personal life. Because in your story, your faith community or your family, they made your entire relationship with God 100% on consumption. And they looked at you and they never said, hey, did you know that like God in heaven made you with a divine and unique purpose and has a specific call on your life, and it's actually tapping all of us and our family on a shoulder and is whispering things to us like, hey, let's do the next good thing that we know that we are supposed to do. Hey, what does it look like for us as a family to live a life worthy of the calling that we have received? Come on. When Paul wrote this letter, he was writing it from a prison cell where he was wrongfully imprisoned for helping people, okay? Like, it didn't work out very well for him. And as a now I'm just going to say, let's just be really honest right now. Let's say that all of your stress and your worry literally undressed your complete future, and you get pulled over on the way home from movement tonight, and the officer's like, put your hands behind your back. You're going, you're going down to Valley Street with us, and you're like, what did I do? You're worrying. You're stressed out, and because you're worried and stressed out, you're causing all of the people in your life to worry and stress out. So we're taking you to jail. But isn't that what your future feels like when you live that story? Are you ready to live a different story? Are you ready to live a better story? So you get in the cop car, the handcuffs are behind your back, and you hit your head on the way in the door shuts, and the officer peels out, and you head down Daniel Webster, and you get on the highway, and you exit, and you get into Valley Street, and they look at you, and they say, you don't get a phone call, you get to write a letter. It's going to be an open letter, and it's going to be posted on every single social media platform out there, and everybody's going to be able to read it. What do you write? Paul was in this position where he was wrongfully imprisoned for trying to help people encounter hope from God. And this is what he wrote. As a prisoner for the Lord, I urge you, I beg you, I plead with you to live a life worthy of the calling that you have received. Love is a team sport, and we need you to play. And all of a sudden, there was nobody on this particular day that looked at Jesus and saw what was getting ready to happen. You could have cut the tension with a knife. All day long, he had been teaching, and the crowds were literally, Mark said, they were pushing forward to touch Jesus, okay? Like everybody was pushing all the way towards him. And I want to tell you exactly what was happening in his life and his story up to this point. As the biographer Mark was telling everybody, listen, pay very close attention. The crowds are pushing towards Jesus. He's had a busy day of teaching, and all of a sudden, Jesus looks at some of his friends, and he's like, come here, you're coming with me. We're going to go to a mountain. And what were mountains for? It's important for you to understand what mountains were for, all throughout the Hebrew scriptures. And so whenever you hear the word mountain, this is what everybody thought about. Rest and worship and pause and focusing not on yourself or your worries or your stress, but focusing in on who God is and was and will always be. And Jesus looks at 12 of his closest friends and he says, you're going to come with me. And what they found whenever they got to the top of the mountain was a little bit different than what they had actually expected. But before all of this, you've got to know exactly what these 12 apprentice leaders had been going through in on-the-job training. And this is what they'd seen Jesus do up to this point in time, okay? They had watched Jesus honor the very leaders that mocked him and dishonored him. They watched Jesus show honor to them. They listened to Jesus talk about his baptism and how afterwards he went off into the wilderness for 40 days and 40 nights and he fasted and wrestled with the devil and beat him. They watched Jesus endure the heartbreak of watching a friend be wrongfully imprisoned. They watched Jesus deal with people that nobody else wanted to deal with, people who were demon possessed. They watched Jesus heal people physically. They watched Jesus wake up before the sun went up to go by himself and pray early before his 6:03 alarm went off. They watched Jesus heal a leper, forgive a paralyzed man. They watched Jesus eat with people that none of the religious people would ever eat with. They watched Jesus field questions from his opponents on fasting and the Sabbath. They watched Jesus' crowds grow so big that as he was teaching, everybody got news and heard the word that Jesus was coming to town, and everybody who was possessed literally was pushing their way towards Jesus to try to touch him. And Jesus says, hey guys, we're going to go to the top of the mountain. And the guys are like, whoa, but there's so much more helping that we got to do. Jesus, you got some more helpings a helping, don't you? You pass some more helpings a helping. There's all these people in there pushing toward. There's so much more to do. Why are we going to the mountain to worship? And Jesus says, just come, just follow me. And here's one of the most compelling things all about Jesus is when Jesus walked into every single one of these guys' stories, he said, I just want you to follow me. He didn't say but first we're going to go through we're going to have an orientation, and the orientation's going to be for years and years and years before you ever actually get to play. You're going to have to learn every single Hebrew word that is in the canon before you ever get to help anybody. And that is not what happened. Jesus said, you come and follow me. And these 12 guys looked at every single one of their families, and you trust me, did that create tension for them? You bet your buttered biscuits that it did. Jesus said, you come and follow me. There's just something about being up on a mountain, isn't there? New Hampshire has 48 mountains that are 4,000 foot or higher. And somebody told me the other day that one of them just got taken off the list and we're going to protest that or something. I don't know. But there's something about being up on a mountain, isn't there? Whenever you're up on the mountain and you look down and you're up on top and you just see everything else and you realize, man, I am so small. And this is a moment where all throughout history to this very point, mountains were symbolized as we're going to go up on the top of the mountain and we're going to worship God and we're going to be reminded exactly how small we are. And Jesus' posture on this mountain was completely different than we're going to go up here and be reminded how small we are. Get ready. Mark chapter 3, beginning in verse 13. This is what happened. Jesus went up on the mountainside and he called all of them whom he wanted, and they came to him. He appointed 12 that they might be with him and that he might send them out to preach and have authority to drive out demons. Wait a minute. Why? What on earth was Jesus doing? Couldn't he do it all himself? Because Jesus knew something that some of us have forgotten along the way, that love is a team sport. Jesus looked at 12 people who could have never pulled off anywhere even close to as good of a job as he did. And he said, later on, all authority in heaven on earth has been given to me, and I am giving it to you. So now get ready to go. And then there are the 12 that he appointed. Simon, who he gave the name Peter. James, the son of Zebedee, and his brother John. He gave them the name Sons of Thunder. Andrew and Philip, Bartholomew, Matthew, Thomas, James, son of Alphaeus, Thaddeus, Simon the Zealot, and then Judas Iscariot, who betrayed him. And Jesus just said, he walked in and he's like, I'm going to build my kingdom, and here's how it's going to work. all of the things that you have been worrying about, you aren't going to worry or stress about them anymore. And here's how you're going to get over and conquer worry and fear and a lack of faith. It's really just an order of priority. You seek my kingdom first. And when every single one of these men, like Jesus walked into every single one of their stories, they literally said, I'm going to not focus on building my kingdom anymore. I'm ready to start building your kingdom. And Jesus, who literally could have done all of this on his own and left all of the 12 at home, and none of us would have been like, sir, you don't have a team. Jesus, who could have done it completely all on his own, knew that love was a team sport. And so he tapped some people on the shoulder and he said, I'm ready. It's ready. The time is now. I want you to seek first the kingdom of God and live a life worthy of the calling that you have received. Jesus, whose investment was greater than his ideals. Jesus gave away authority. And Jesus gave away authority. And why are we as people sometimes so afraid to give our authority away? Jesus, who lived the best story first. Jesus, who looked at all of these leaders, said, you following me is literally going to cost you everything. Leaders go first, and it's gonna hurt. Are you ready? Are you with me? And history would tell us that it cost them their lives. It cost them their lives to actually build Jesus' kingdom and not their own. And I would venture to say, like I'll be open and honest with you, worry and stress only comes off the chest for me when I'm thinking about my own kingdom. When I'm thinking about my version of God is so much smaller than he really is in reality, that's when worry and stress begin going off the charts for me. And Jesus says, you just follow me and you build my kingdom, it is going to be the best story that you could ever possibly live. Are you ready? And when they went to the top of that mountain, they had no idea what life was going to be like when they got to the bottom. One leader said it this way: with the kingdom mentality and a heart after following Jesus and moving closer to Jesus and doing whatever it takes to make the next move, whatever that might be, closer to Jesus, and helping people, a life where love is a team sport and where every one of us are living a life worthy of the calling that we have been given. One leader said it this way. He said, if we live for ourselves, if we lead for ourselves in our families and our work, in the end, all we will have to show for is ourselves. And together, I don't know for you, I know for me, whenever I say that out loud as myself, I'm like, oh my gosh, there is so much at stake here. What would it look like for every single one of us to live a story where we aren't the star of the show, but Jesus is? What would actually happen right now if every single one of our investments aligned with our own ideals? The hard reality for me is intentions aren't investments. Ideals aren't investments. Investments are investments. And we look at seeking God's kingdom first and building Jesus' kingdom first means that our investments, we're investing our time, our capacity, our treasure, any kind of resource that we have to create a way and a place for other people to move closer to Jesus. And that's pretty stressful, because when you look at your life and you look at your calendar and you're like, but where and how am I going to be able to give my time and give my resources and reprioritize my time and reprioritize my resources? Even the thought of that brings me worry and stress. And I would say, get in line, me too. And I'm in this constant situation where I'm always saying, God, what is it in my life that needs to change? And every single one of us, we said tonight, and we said it together, and we said it out loud, and it is we've got it captured, and so you heard it, and it's we can pull it up and be you said this, you want to help people, all right? But before we help people, before we make the next step, before we take the next leap in our story. Before we begin to change the world, we must first order ours. Before we begin to change the world, we must first take stock and order ours. You can't be generous with your time if your time is literally in the red and in deficit and you are living in scarcity all the time. You can't live generously if you are literally living in scarcity and you feel like there is nothing that you can do to do one more thing to help one more person. And if that's you, it is time to take stock and stop and pause and evaluate and say, what does it look like for me and my family to seek God's kingdom first? What does this look like? Because what we do first tells a story about whose kingdom we are actually in the business of building. Like, what we do first tells a story of whose kingdom we are actually interested in building. Words are cheap. And so I did a lot of reflecting in my life and as in preparing for this, and I'm going to be extremely real and vulnerable with you. I printed off all of my bank statements from 2018, and I just began to highlight some things that I didn't like in myself and in my story. And for some of you who don't know me, this is going to come as a surprise. For those of you who do know me, no shock or spoiler here. But I began to highlight every single month, every single time that I would go to my favorite little corner market, Reed's Ferry, right on the corner of Depot and Daniel Webster. And there would be these purchases over and over, and they were small, but they were 16-ounce cans of caffeine that were somewhere in the neighborhood of 200 plus milligrams of caffeine, all right? I didn't even need it, all right? I sleep with the IV of coffee, okay? So I didn't even need this stuff. And I began to tally, and I began to highlight every single thing in my life, in my story. And it was $3 here, $3 there, $3 here, $3 everywhere, right? And I just began over and over and over, and I began looking all throughout the entire year. This is called discretionary spending, okay? And I began to look at everything, and I began to tally up. I spent, in a year, $501 on myself. And the thing is that really hit me really hard is every day that I spent that $3, I spent it on myself. It was the first thing I did in that day in terms of what I did financially. And I was man, and so I'm here to say, here to tell you, I didn't like that. I didn't like that in myself, in my story, and it wasn't good for me. It wasn't good for my family. And I haven't drinking energy drink from January 1st all the way through now. So don't don't put them on my front porch, or I'll be forced to drink them as a steward of the earth. Okay, I don't want to waste stuff. But I'm drinking a lot of coffee right now, so don't worry about me. Okay, I'm really good. But the reality is there's some stuff and some spots in my life where I say, I want to live more generously. I want to lead more fearlessly. And I can't do that if I'm being choked out with worry and stress and things are just super tight. And if you're anything like me, you're man, there is a lot of help that I want to bring to the world. There's a lot of good that I want to do, but I don't have time and I don't have resources because right now I'm just kind of strapped. Last year, I documented every single family and couple that I sat down with that any of our teams counseled throughout all of 2018 and in 2017. And one of the biggest things in every single family's life was financial margin. That in every single family that sat down in counseling spoke out loud and said, when we talk about money, our blood pressure just kind of goes up. And whenever we talk, we stress out and we worry. And so what happens is we just don't talk about it. And so we took that information to our finance team and we said, hey guys, I think we got a lot of people hurting right now and we need to help. I don't really even know what that looks like. And a couple of our leaders came back and they said, hey, what if we did a workshop and we just taught people how to manage their resources? And because if you grew up in a family like mine, nobody talked about religion, politics, or money at the table, but maybe they talked about it in other ways. And so you grew up and you have this money and you're I don't know what I'm supposed to do with this. Nobody taught me how to manage this money. And so we end up making unwise decisions. And so what do? And so Amy and Corey and Juan said, hey, we're going to start this workshop called Financial Peace University. And I stood up in front of all of Movement at the beginning of last fall. And I said, hey, guys, if you're hurting, we want to be able to help. And we want you to literally live stress-free and worry-free. And we want you to have peace in your family and your relationships. Why? Not because we want something from you, but we want peace for you. If you don't tell your money where to go, your money will run your show. And every single one of us in every single one of our stories, we have to deal with the reality that Jesus said, can you, by worrying, add any value to your life? Is worrying working? It's not. And so my plan didn't work. Worrying isn't working. And we looked at everybody and we're like, hey, if you want to begin your journey towards financial peace, if you really want to take the debt in your life seriously, we believe we've got the resources and tools to be able to help you walk through that journey. And it is for real. I stood up here and I said that, and after service, there were 3 families that walked down here and they were waiting to talk to me. One by one family after another family told me the same exact story. Our marriage was upside down. We were getting ready to get a divorce. We went to counseling as a last-ditch effort, and one of the people that we counseled with said, you guys need to go through Financial Peace University. And every single one of them ended up doing it. And one by one, all 3 of those families at separate times, those families not even knowing each other, and one of them was a single person, literally said, I want to provide for others what others provided for me. This completely revolutionized and changed my life. And by the end of that conversation with those 3 families, they financially paid the way for 18 people to take the first Financial Peace University workshop. And here's what ended up happening. 18 people, after completing Financial Peace University, literally paid off by the end of the 9th week over $11,420 that was non-mortgage debt. And every single one of them said, we are not as worried and stressed about resources as we were whenever we began. Every single one of those families began an emergency savings fund to break away from the use of credit cards. 4 credit cards were closed by the end of the 9-week session of Financial Peace University. And here's what's so heartbreaking. Forbes released an article last year that I pulled out of the back of an airplane seat back article, and I folded it up and I put it in my folder that tells a heartbreaking statistic that 70% of Americans don't have a savings account of $500 to their name. That means 7 out of 10 of us in this room are one emergency away from putting something on a card. That's not the kind of freedom that Jesus has called us to live. And so, because worrying is not working, what does that look like? So we want every single person to get to experience financial freedom. You don't even have to be a Jesus follower. You don't have to believe any of this. But if you're somebody, you're just tired of carrying around the stress and the worry that comes with debt, then you couldn't have come here at a better time. Because on March 31st, this is what we're first time announcing it. On March 31st, we are kicking off our next Financial Peace University for 9 weeks, and it is going to be upstairs from 9 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. on Sunday mornings. And our team is putting our money where our mouths are. And if you sign up as a family to go through Financial Peace University, you pay for the course materials. If you attend 8 out of the 9 sessions, our team's going to turn right around and give you all of your money back because we believe that it is 100% worth the investment in your future. Now, come on, listen. Most of you weren't ever told to do this. Most of you weren't told by anybody, you got to live on a budget. Because if you don't tell your money where to go, your money just goes. Have you ever noticed that? You're like, oh my gosh, it was there, and it's gone. And I look around, it's like, oh, well, there's all these energy drinks sitting around everywhere. And here's the reality. Did you know that you would not have a job if your company didn't have a budget? Did you know, you wouldn't have a community here at Movement if we did not have a budget? And here's what budgets do. They free you up to tell your money where to go. It's really that easy. So I'm going to tell you just really quickly, and this one is totally for free tonight. Okay, ready? Here we go. Income plus outgo equals exactly 0. Income plus outgo equals EZ. This is the easy budget. And so today, as you guys leave, like our teams put together like this really easy, simple financial worksheet. You can just take it home, and it'll be a blessing to you. And make a promise, like don't let this create war in your family. This is literally to just get everybody on the same page. And here's what a budget will do: a budget will free you up to not seek your own kingdom first, but to seek God's kingdom first. And here's what this looks like for us at Movement. Because of the generosity of people just like you at Movement, every single year, us living and operating and leading on a budget means that we're able to literally give away, like before anything even happens, over close to 15% of every dollar that comes in these doors literally goes out to make a contribution and make an impact in our community. $39,446 are literally invested outside of the walls of 27 Depot Street to help other people move closer to Jesus in other communities. Another $15,521 is literally used all throughout the year to love the 603 and for us to be able to love our neighbors in intentional, practical ways. Now, I don't know what this looks like for you. I don't know. I don't know if you're like me, you're just like I'm ready to not live in stress anymore. I want to live in peace. And you're in the best place possible for you to be able to begin that journey. Eugene Peterson, who wrote the Message translation, wrote tons of different books. And if you have the YouVersion Bible app and you read the Message translation, he was at the end of his life this last year, and he was surrounded by his entire family in a cabin in Montana. And he got a chance to say goodbye to his family. Whenever we think about our lives in reverse, everything begins to fall in place and everything begins to start making a little bit more sense. So he got a chance, and everybody got a chance to tell him how important he was in the investments that he made in their lives, and that he spent his whole life not building his own kingdom. Him and his wife lived in a house that was less than 900 square foot for 40 years, gave away virtually every single dollar that he ever made. And his kids were surrounding him. They got a chance to share how huge of an impact that he'd made in their lives. What do you want people at the end of your life to show up and thank you for? Hospice had been in the room, and Eugene had gone out of consciousness, and his whole family was just there mourning. A day goes by, and he's non-responsive but still alive, and the second day goes by, and some of you know this, you've walked through this with your family, and you know how brutally painful it is. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, they look over at Eugene, and they see him slowly lift up his arms. And his son said, he heard him say, "Thank you." But he wasn't saying thank you to anybody in the room. You see, what if our life could be a huge thank you letter to Jesus? What if we could live with such kind of a gratitude that we could literally bring as many people to heaven with us as possible? You see, love is a team sport. Are you ready to play? Because we need you. And it doesn't matter where you are at in your journey. It doesn't matter how far you feel like you've not been able to help people throughout any point in time in your life. You just say yes to the next opportunity that you feel like Jesus has called you to build his kingdom and not yours. Love is a team sport, and we need you. Would you stand to your feet? God, we love you so, so much. I just thank you for the stories that are represented in this space, in this room, and all of the journeys that you have tailored uniquely to bring people exactly to this place. God, I pray for all my friends who are bogged down and beaten down by stress and worry whenever they think about their future. They're filled with anxiety and panic. And God, I pray that you would give them the courage to pursue peace, that they would take the first step to be able to give their time and their talent and their treasure to building your kingdom and not our own. As you stood on a mountain, you looked at 12 leaders and you said, I need you. And you gave away authority for us to go down the mountain to do good. And God, I pray that right now we would leave here as a team and you would give us every bit of bravery and courage that it's going to take for us to love the 603 as though they are our family. And we pray this in the powerful name of Jesus. Amen. We love you guys so much. Have a great week. Go and be the church. Love you guys.